Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Your hosts have built this spot over the past 40 years, meeting every day with people who are in the headlines and behind the real stories.
The conversation continues today at 1850 Main Street as David Zanotti, Rob Walgate, Alan C. Duncan, and Jeff Sanders speak with David Mosura about his firsthand experience witnessing the attempted assassination of Donald Trump.
I guess people are, when you watch a video that many times, you project yourself as what if I was in the seats? What would have it felt like? And I don't want to be morbid over this, but I do want to let the people who were there speak. I mean, I think people are interested in knowing, what did you see? What did it feel like? Was it all just a blur for everybody that was there? You guys clearly had cognizance of what was going on very, very quickly. Was it shock or surprise, or what was it?
Yeah, it was shock. It was surprise. Like I said, the first shot, I knew exactly what happened. I knew exactly what it was. There's no not a doubt. It was not a firework. It was not there. I know a firework and I know a gunshot. And I on top of being a policeman, I'm a combat veteran too. I know a gunshot. That was a gun. That was a rifle round. It wasn't a handgun. It was I could get that specific with it. And so as soon as it happened, as soon as I heard it, my niece was sitting in the caddy corner in front of me, and my sister and my brother-in-law were sitting next to me. And as soon as I heard it, and then like, you got to imagine, like in a matter of a split second, I'm hearing this. I see the hair flip up. I see that misty debris. It clicks in my head what's going on. You know what I mean? And that takes a split second, maybe a second. In my mind, it took an hour, but looking back on it, it was it wasn't any more than a second. And I reached over to my sister and I said, "Get down." And at that time, the second round goes off. And the kid, his name's Matt. He was sitting next to my niece. When I went to tell her to get down, he even had already, shoved her down onto the bleachers. I got to give that kid a lot of credit. He did a lot of good things that day. He was a young kid. He's not a policeman. He's not military. Very savvy. He was a very good job. So he laid on top of my niece. My brother-in-law laid on top of my sister. And in fact, in the picture, you might see that I'm holding him on top of my niece in that picture. And if you look, like I'm moving my head back and forth, I'm talking to my brother-in-law and him. And at one point, I looked up to see what was going on stage, and I could see that they had Trump on the ground. And I was looking to see what was going on there because, like, you're curious, you want to know what's going on. And at the same time, I'm also looking around like, where's this guy at? You know what I mean? I know, and at this time, there's already the volley of rounds have already been fired, and I'm looking around and I can see Trump's feet. That's all you can see. They had everything else covered up. He was missing his shoe, and his feet weren't moving. And I thought, man, he did this right in front of us. It was surreal. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many times I've seen people get shot. I can't tell you how many bodies I've seen. This was different. This was the former president. This stuff doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen. It was weird. It was even today, it still hasn't fully hit me, what happened. And like I said, this stuff doesn't, I've seen this stuff countless times before. It doesn't really, you become callous to it after so long. This was different though. This was weird. And so when I seen that, the bleachers that were off to my left, I looked up at that and I could see the people that were motioning. They were trying to get attention to get help up in the bleachers. And, and I could see it was obvious that somebody was shot up there. And at one point I remember yelling down, "Hey, somebody up there shot." They weren't here. And nobody could have heard me. I don't even know why I tried to yell it. And I could see everybody was focused on Trump, which that makes perfectly good sense. So I remembered when we walked in, there was an open walkway that led right to those bleachers. And I thought, well, if I can get to those bleachers, maybe I can help him. So I grabbed the kid that was on top of him. I told my brother-in-law, I said, you guys stay right here. Just stay on top of my sister. And I grabbed the kid. I didn't even really know the kid. I just met him that night. And I grabbed him and I says, you stay here. Don't let her up. You just stay on top of her. I'll be back. And then I started running down to the bleachers. And I don't think any of that ever got on any news channel or whatever. But at that time, they had already rushed Trump off. But I couldn't even get over to it because they had the whole thing blocked off. I couldn't even get over to the stands. I mean, I told one of the Secret Service guys, there's somebody up there at shot. They were holding press corps down on the ground and stuff because at that time, I don't think that they were fully aware that the shooter had been killed at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to keep everybody down on the ground. And I even asked them, I'm like, hey, let me go help them. They need help. Somebody needs help up there. And they wouldn't. They wouldn't. I mean, it would have been foolish to jump the barrier. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, that would have been.
More people making bad decisions ain't going to result in a good decision.
Right. So another question I think, Dave, people have is, and again, you may have not been in a position to see this, but we certainly have only got the same loop reel over and over and over again. We haven't seen any footage of the medical care that then would have gone to the three people. Was there a triage moment there where everything stopped and medical care got in once Trump was gone?
No, you mean for the victims that were in the stands?
Yeah, for the victims, yeah.
Yeah, so they did. They did. They had guys come in from the other side and they got them out. I remember up where I was pointing because I didn't know at first there was somebody to my right that was shot. I didn't know. I think that ended up, the one to my right ended up being the fatality.
Wow.
The one to my left was not, and I thought that it was because it looked like the way they carried that person out. In my mind, I'm like, that person's gone. But yeah, they did. By the time I got down there and I was telling the Secret Service guy, hey, it ended up within seconds after that, they come around the corner and got him out of there. But and as far as like a triage area, 100% they would have had a triage. I'm just from past experiences and working these or being around these things and stuff. 100% they would have had a triage area set up there. They had helicopter. They were landing air medical within minutes of us leaving. So
no
they
kidding.
Must have already. They probably already had them on standby for Secret Service.
Now, did they dismiss this crowd quickly? I mean, there's a lot of people. How did everybody have to move?
Yeah, so the first they dismissed the crowd to the bleachers to my right first, then the bleachers to my left because those were where the bodies were. Because you got to remember those are crime scenes now.
Yeah,
those are they have to preserve all that evidence. It's not about just letting people going home. It's about preserving evidence. So they got those people out of there, and now meanwhile out in the crowd there's still 15,000 people, but they got us out of there first, and then everybody else just kind of cleared out.
Well, I'm guessing that people would like to hear the second part of that, looking at what might have been a lifeless president on the ground. He got up. What did that look like?
It was surreal. It was, like you said at the beginning of it, this is Butler. Who expected this?
Yeah.
What are the odds that this happens at all? What are the odds it happens in Butler, Pennsylvania? What are the odds that it happens that I'm standing right there? Especially when everybody prior to this, everybody was happy. Everybody was laughing and enjoying everything he was saying and just enjoying the atmosphere, and it was just, nobody expected it. But like I said, when they had him on the ground and I could just see his feet, I honestly thought to myself, they killed him. He's dead. And at that point, I looked up and I was still looking around for who was shooting. And that's when I seen the person in the bleachers that was hit. So when I'm making my way down, at that point, I'm like, all right, I made the decision. I'm going to make my way down to these bleachers and try to get to that person. At some point, they stood him up. And I remember hearing it. I'd never seen it. I'd never seen them stand him up until I heard the crowd. When I heard the crowd roar when he stood up, I looked up and seen him standing there for a split second. And then I continued trying to get down towards the bleacher to my left where that person was hit. But because I honestly thought that he was dead. I mean, not to be morbid, I just did. His legs weren't moving. I remembered seeing his hair flip up and his, like I said, I remember seeing all that. And I thought that must, That must have been a fatal shot or something, or one of the rapid fire shots got through. But when he stood up and the crowd went crazy, and it was a good. I mean, naturally, it's a great thing that he's okay. But still at the same time, in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, but there's still people that are shot. Like, let's not celebrate. We need to. There's still people that are injured, and I don't know. Maybe that's just instilled in me over the years that I kind of had that mindset. But it was just the whole thing was just surreal. It was crazy. It was like I said, even today, it still hasn't fully resonated in my head. Everything that happened.
David, you've seen a lot. I know that I've had many conversations with a cousin of mine who again spent a career with the state police in Pennsylvania. And guys kind of retire as early as they can when they've seen a lot, because I think we really underestimate the devastation of watching all the carnage that people in law enforcement see these days. And it's not like television. It's a very different world. In spite of all that you've seen, obviously this one is going to make an impact on your life for a long time.
Oh, I'll never forget this. My niece is 18 years old. I should probably know this better, but she's 18 years old. And when we were on a car ride home, and I even told my sister, I says, you don't realize it right now, what happened today. I says, but tonight or tomorrow, you'll be laying in bed and you'll just be sitting there thinking, and then it's going to click in your head. And it might bother you, but eventually you're going to realize the magnitude of what happened today. And my niece asked me, she says, when's the last time anything like this happened? I said, I think Ronald Reagan in 1980. This doesn't happen. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, it's not, I never, ever, ever, ever dreamed or had the nightmare that this would have ever happened directly in front of me. Never.
Well, I can tell you on behalf of a listening country, thanks for being a law enforcement leader. Thanks for being the guy that you are. Thanks for being a patriot. And if you don't mind, I can assure you that a lot of people who are hearing this conversation are going to take a minute and say a prayer for you and for your family and for every person that was an eyewitness there, because we haven't really had time to reflect on the fact that the people who witnessed this, every one of their lives was traumatized. I mean, this is grade one trauma. This isn't just, oh, gee, I witnessed history, or gee, somebody caught a pass in the end zone off the side of their helmet and won the Super Bowl. This is a very different moment of history.
It is. And if you don't, like, I might be the exception to the rule, but there's most of the people in the stands, they're either steel mill workers or secretaries or, they've never seen this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's really going to resonate with them. And, those are the people, like, you worry about those people, because this is really going to have an impact on their life. It's going to have an impact on my life. And, I just, another thing is there's a lot of stuff floating around out there. I stopped looking at social media. I stopped watching the news on, I never watched CNN, but I stopped watching all national news. There's nothing but clickbait. There's nothing but, conspiracy theorists. There's nothing but, just people trying to draw attention and judging the tactics or the decisions that either the Secret Service made or federal agents or state or local law enforcement. This is not the time for that. This is not the time for that. And it's a lot of times it's people that they just don't know what they're talking about.
You're darn right.
And that stuff is going to cause problems, and they need to stop it, because there's things that happen that doesn't make sense to the normal person. And it's very frustrating that I can't go on every news channel and just say, no, this is why that happened. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it's creating a bad environment. It's creating, a bad culture. And that stuff's not good. People they need to let this just be investigated, let everything come out, and stop thinking everything's a conspiracy. Stop thinking there's a coup behind everything. There's not.
But we're watching this pretty close, officer. We're watching this, sir, very closely, and I can concur with you. I've been listening to all the stuff you're not. I've been watching all the stuff. As the facts keep coming out, the pattern of normalcy starts to emerge. And when you put yourself in real time, for those of us that have been to Butler, we know what that land looks like. We know those of us that have been in major events, you put the pieces together and the conspiracies just start to disappear. There's questions, of course, everyone's going to go. The obvious reason about how could somebody get on a roof? Look, they climbed up. That's how they got there. I mean, let's not make that big.
So, there's crazier one. Listen, there's crazier ones out there that I can answer, and I just can't. And I'm like, I can because I know the answer, but I can't speak on it. And
Sure.
I'm like, it gets frustrating. And it's like, so they start blaming people and dragging people's names through the mud, or agencies' names through the mud, and it's like you're wrong. You're wrong from the get-go. Just the people
Absolutely not.
The people that know, just they're too respectful to the system to tell you.
Well, and if anything, and I know this wasn't a pre-scripted interview, if anything, it's just talking with you, to me, is the balance of wisdom and sincerity. It's just a funny thing. I saw you on the screen and I said, that guy's law enforcement because of the way that you acted. Now, there were probably a half a dozen people that are, if we now together, we looked at that, we would be able to pick them out, and you see that they're trained responses and how that they operated. That's the nature of what law enforcement is doing. And that must be preserved at all times. And that understanding's got to be there. You guys don't say everything that you could say because you're trained not to. Sometimes you take abuse that is absurd when it's connection with reality. I mean, I'll just give you one example, and maybe you heard this or not because it may be in the realm of hearsay, but it's reached national media now. It's pretty clear that, fortunately, people in the crowd saw this guy on the building, which makes sense because the people in the stands were elevated and he was elevated. Jeff and I, watching within 2 minutes, we said, elevated shooter. It's got to be an elevated shooter. This couldn't have come from the crowd. All right. And so of course they saw him too. Well, as the story now is unfolding, and a few days it'll change, I'm sure, but as it unfolds right now, local police officers got to that building listening to the people who were saying there's somebody up there. Yes. And one policeman got on another cop's back and hauled himself up. Now, that just sounds to me like the cops I know. Yep. All right. We don't have time for a ladder. Get down, jump on my back. Let's go. Jumped his way up. Now, pulls himself up over, and the shooter turns around and points the rifle right at him. All right. Now, the guy's got to duck to not get his head blown off. Getting killed isn't going to help anything. He doesn't have the ability to confront the shooter. He's trying to get on the roof with him. And as he tries to duck, he falls off the guy's back. And within seconds, the shooter takes his shot.
Now, how much time did that police officer have to report that? And he's not keyed into the Secret Service special communications.
Very, very, very good point. Look, our radio, every law enforcement agency in the country doesn't share the same radio channel.
That's right.
You know what I mean? For that police, and I'm just speculating that this may have been an issue, I don't know, that for that police officer to radio to somebody would have taken enough time for that to happen, for him to start shooting, because he would have to radio to his dispatcher might have to radio to another dispatcher that would radio to the Secret Service dispatcher that would then radio to the Secret Service that would then drag Donald Trump off stage.
In a perfect world, it's 1 minute and the shots rang out within seconds.
We don't live in a perfect world.
That's right.
And I just want to conclude that thought by saying Monday morning quarterbacking is always a stupid idea.
Yeah, especially for people that aren't professionals.
And if you're not in the Secret Service or in any form of law enforcement, you don't know these people, it's best just be quiet and let them do their job and talk and find out what happened.
Well, David, let us let you go because you've got work to do today and you've been very kind to give us your time. How's your family? I mean, you were there with family and their experience. How are they doing?
They're good. So when I went down to try to get to the other bleachers, it clicked in my head, shoot, my dad's at home watching this on TV. And my sister's kids are sitting there with him on the couch watching it. And I tried calling my dad to tell him that we're okay. Shut the TV off. Don't let the kids watch TV. When we get home, we'll explain to them what happened. They don't need to see it prior to us getting home. They don't need to hear the news media saying that people are shot in the crowd. You know what I mean? Like, they're little kids.
Sure.
They don't. Cell phones wouldn't work. I mean, nothing. I couldn't get a phone call out. I could not get a phone call out. Not until, well, I think at that point I showed my phone in my pocket and just forgot about my phone until we got out of there and I pulled my phone out and everyone was telling me about the bucket head on TV. But, and then I was able to get a hold of my dad. Yeah, but they're good. They're good. You know, my dad was alive when Kennedy was killed, and he likes to, you know, poke his nose into all these theories and stuff. And so this one he's asking a million questions about, and topic of discussion for us all right now.
Rob, thank you for letting us meet your friend.
Thank you, David.
Absolutely. I hope I shed some insight on things and, you know, maybe cleared some stuff up.
Well, you sound like one of Rob's friends, a very real guy who lives a life for family and service and faith, and you did it all in that day. And thank you.
Rob's got one of the greatest families I've ever met.
Yeah, I concur with that.
Thanks,
concur with
brother.
that. And he let us crash into the few days off he gets all year, which so we crashed into both your lives today. Thank you, guys.
We're down here then telling stories, reliving times with the Mosura family, and traveling to Beaver County swimming pool or beach trips or things at Boys Church. We've spent a lot of time together through the years, so a lot of smiles reliving those memories down here.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you, my friend. Be safe.
Thank you, sir. And we wish you God's blessing on your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
So many lessons to be learned, so many things we want to talk about. Let's try to get them in first order of priority. First is the injured. There are GoFundMe accounts that have been established and have been credentialed for each of the people that are involved. It's as simple as just looking for them. So, Alan, how can people find those?
Sure. We will have links to those GoFundMe accounts and pages in the show notes for this broadcast at thepublicsquare.com. So we'll include those links so people can just go there and click them.
And that's something we can do. That in addition to prayers for all of those folks, and clearly that's vital and important and necessary, but we can also step up. So that's first and foremost. Let's care for those who need care. All right, and then the next question is taking a few steps back. Now, Jeff, in full disclosure, you have family in law enforcement. We won't go any farther than that. But you've also they're sufficiently placed in law enforcement that you would have heard lots of chatter and crosstalk in regards to what's been going on in media versus what needs to be discussed in regards to fairness, policy, et cetera. So I know you're concerned. We've talked a little bit briefly. You're concerned that people are rushing to judgment and probably
absolutely
making some false conclusions.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Monday morning quarterbacking is terrible. And some of the stuff I've watched, like even last night, I was looking at some clickbait of people criticizing the female Secret Service special agents. Like they're not tall enough or they didn't know what they were doing or any of this sort of nonsense. First of all, they were not part of the personal protection detail of President Trump. They were further out. They're not there surrounding President Trump 1 foot away.
They're not the diamond group.
They're not the inner circle, right?
Right.
And I can tell you with 100% assurance that they are very well trained to do what they're supposed to do. And you see one of the female Secret Service agents jump up there to assist the personal detail. Good for her. She was putting her life on the line. She was doing more than what they were expecting of her. So God bless her. And everybody else who wants to criticize them, please just be quiet.
For a while.
Let's
let more facts come out.
Please do not jump to conspiracy theories
Well,
or prophecies or any of this other stuff that I've been hearing lately.
So, but one look. Let's also have the humility to admit our own ignorance.
Right.
People are immediately assuming that Donald Trump today would have the same Secret Service protection as Donald Trump as president of the United States. That is
And he
absolutely
does
not true.
No former president does.
Right. And pleading for more protection, which is appropriate and certainly timely, and that's going to be a conversation Congress is going to be having at great detail, is one thing. But moving the federal bureaucracy to the levels of change and protection, this is a government with a big budget and look. RFK's Jr.'s got no Secret Service coverage at all, and that's of course that's terribly wrong. So okay, RFK needs more coverage. Trump clearly needed more coverage. For all we know, President Biden may need more coverage. We can all say it. We can all see it. It's so easy from our seats to say.
And if anybody did drop the ball, we don't know anything more about that.
Well, but we can talk about the coverage all we want, but to get it, somebody's got to pay for it. Now, I know we're going to pay for it, but guess what? Like if you go to your company and say, I need 5 more people on the line with me and I need them tomorrow, the company's going to say, great, we got to hire them. We got to bring them through HR. We got to do, and that's just in your little company or my little company.
Do you know how long it takes to train a Secret Service special agent? About 8 months.
Okay. And do you know how long it takes to get additional appropriation money through budgets?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, hindsight's brilliant. We're all brilliant in hindsight. So, okay, there are cracks in the system, and those cracks are clearly dangerous. No amount of criticism is going to change what happened.
Right.
None. So we got to have forward thinking.
And it makes me thankful we live in a country where this is not a common occurrence every week or every month or every year. This is something that for a lot of folks is once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime. It doesn't happen every day. And I'm thankful for that.
Well, and I know that there's an incredible amount of sentiment and emotion around this, and there's going to be, a smart person would duck right now and let all the waves of emotion just go out, and it's understandable. It's understandable, and not try to navigate all that emotion. But I think that it is obligatory as people of faith that we care for our words. I've heard a lot of people in official capacity across all different perspectives saying, God saved Donald Trump's life and providence steered that bullet, or it was God's providence that steered his head or blew the wind or whatever that might be. Now, that may be totally true. I mean, we're all familiar with the story of George Washington's military coat and the fact that there was one point in a battle in which there were 8 holes in that jacket, and Washington got off that horse alive. Right? And I'm very familiar with Pope John Paul's statement at his assassination attempt in 1981, where he said, one hand pulled the trigger, but another steered the bullet.
But when Ronald Reagan was shot, Thomas Delahanty was shot, the Washington, D.C. police officer, and also press secretary Jim Brady was shot and debilitated for the rest of his life. And so if I believe in providence, absolutely I do.
But there's two sides of providence.
It doesn't mean that everybody gets away scot-free, because if George Washington, if 8.69 caliber bullets missed George Washington, that means they hit somebody else.
And that's exactly the experience that we have here. So the same loving, caring, all-knowing providence that spared one life was fully aware that the 3 bullets that were shot were going to hit someone. And they did. One person's dead. One clear hero whose family has already said he'd do it again. And 2 other people who were exhibiting, practicing their rights of citizenship and their sense of responsibility in attending that rally and doing what they believed was their patriotic duty. And it cost them their lives. Now, those are the heroes and the brave people who did everything they could to put their lives at risk, either to protect them, save them, or try to bring them help. So the providence is a very big conversation, and we don't want to treat it lightly. Washington spoke about providence constantly in his writings. I know that for a fact. Dr. Allen and I have documented those instances in works that are out there. But the subject is bigger than the person who that day was able to walk away. And if in fact there is a profound sense that providence spared President Trump's life, then I hope that all the people around President Trump take time to stop and ask the question, what does God expect of us now? Why were we spared? And what comes with that obligation? So I think we have to put that in perspective as well. So, Rob, I want to thank you again for giving us a chance to meet David. I mean, we're just being real careful here. There's so many things that could be said that we don't want to say because it's inappropriate. We want to honor all of legal protocols for law enforcement people, et cetera. But wow, you really gave us an opportunity to meet a fine gentleman.
No, thanks to David for taking the time. And I'm encouraged knowing that there are many, many more David Mosuras throughout this country that serve and protect us every single day.
Let's remember to pray for them today. Pray for everyone that's involved in the situation, to pray for our country. And I'd put one last point on this. And we'll talk more about this in the days that come. At this stage in the game, we've got sort of a blank slate on the person that actually pulled the trigger. And everyone wants to fill in the reason why. We'll endlessly ask why. Something that no one is talking about is the action that we actually saw there might actually be the result of a life of meaninglessness. This person may have been in a position in life where they were so disconnected from the realities that make life worth living that they were willing to exercise the most futile attempt and the most amateuristic approach. And maybe the reason that they slid through so many protocols was because no one expected anyone serious to ever do anything as stupid as what was done. But this person knew when he climbed that building, he'd never come off again, ever. What would provoke a person to sacrifice their life in that way? What sense of meaninglessness would cause that to happen? And I think that's the question that ought to haunt us as people of faith and as culture. How are we addressing that question in civil society?
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.